If you're writing code, you've probably looked at the new AI coding assistants. GitHub Copilot is probably the biggest and most well-known name in the space. But recently, Amazon announced that their assistant, CodeWhisper, can now work with Terraform. So I thought it'd be interesting to have a look and see how well that works. CodeWhisper works with a number of languages. It will handle Python, Java, JavaScript, and others. And as per the announcement, it can now handle infrastructure as code tools, so CloudFormation, CDK, and Terraform. It will also integrate into a number of IDEs, IntelliJ, PyCharm, if you're using the AWS console, Cloud9 and Lambdas, and VSCode. And that's what we'll look at today. So let's jump over into VSCode. The first thing that we'll need to do to be able to use CodeWhisperer is install an extension. So come to the extensions, we'll search for AWS Toolkit, and we'll install this. Now, to connect, we will need some authentication with AWS. If you're using the paid tier, that will typically be through single sign-on or IAM. For the free access, you'll need a AWS Builder ID, and you can see that down at the bottom here it's telling me I haven't got a Builder ID connected. Let's change that. We'll click on this, we will click on Builder ID, and it will take me through an authentication process where we'll jump to the browser, it'll validate a token, and then it will ask me to log into the Builder's ID. I already have one set up, but if you haven't got one, you can create that here. Just go through the login process, and once it's authenticated, it will ask you just to confirm that you're happy sharing your data with VSCode. Excellent. And switching back into VSCode, you can see that now we have a tick against our Builder ID, and CodeWhisperer is showing ready to go. Switching back to the VSCode Explorer, I've just set up a simple project here. We've got a couple of files. We have an AWS.tf. This is just setting up some providers, telling Terraform how we want to connect into AWS, which versions we want to use, etc. And I've set some variables up already. So just the AWS region that we're going to be deploying into, an owner name, and the project name. I typically use these to build a prefix for the resources that I'm deploying via Terraform, and we'll demonstrate that in a minute. We've got our Builder ID enabled and connected. CodeWhisperer is ready to go. So let's see how well this will actually work. Let's see if it will create some good Terraform. Let's create a new file. I'm going to call this data.tf. And I'm going to retrieve some data from our account. Now, the way that we interact with CodeWhisperer is by writing comments in our code. In Terraform, these are prefixed with a hash. And what I'm going to say is retrieve current AWS account ID and region. When I press return, you'll see the CodeWhisperer rotates at the bottom. That's it going out and getting its suggestions for us. And that looks good. You can see it's giving us some choices, one of one. If there was more than one option here, it would let us scroll through those with the arrow keys. But I'm happy with that, so I'll just accept by pressing the tab. And we asked for the region as well. That's good. And it's carrying on. And I mentioned here that I often build out a prefix built from my project name, the region we're deploying into, possibly the account ID. And let's see if we can get that to work. So let's have a look here. Paste a new comment in, create a local variable called prefix, use the account ID, the region, and the project name variable. Okay, so let's have a look at this. Locals, that's just telling Terraform that we're using a local variable. Prefix equals, and it's using our caller identity, current account ID, that's good. Data, AWS current name, that's good. And our project name as well. Yeah, this all looks good so far, so let's accept that. Excellent. Next, let's create some IAM resources. So we'll just create a new file called iam.tf, and let's assume we're going to work with a Lambda. So let's ask it to create a trust policy. That looks acceptable. Now let's ask it to create an IAM role, and let's ask it to use that trust policy that it's just created, and also that prefix that we created very early on, and append on the end of that Lambda role. Okay, so it's giving us an IAM role called Lambda role. The name that it's going to assign is, as we asked, the local prefix with the Lambda role, and it's using the trust policy. Tab to accept that one. Let's tell it now to create a policy that will let us access S3 buckets and objects in the buckets and attach that to the role. Okay, we've got the list bucket and get object there. Tab to accept. You'll see there it's actually recognized that we need to attach that, so it's giving us the comment to do that. And what we can see here now is that it's also generated the policy that's going to attach this onto our role. So you can see it's automatically assumed that for the name we want to use the local prefix again. It's recognized that we're putting Lambda role policy at the end. It's done that automatically. And it's pulled in the role and the policy that we created earlier. That's excellent. We'll accept that one.
So, how good is the new functionality? Well, I'm not going to pretend that it's perfect. None of these Code Assistant Gen AI tools are. There are always going to be mistakes that come in. But for me personally, it definitely accelerates my development. It lets me get things done faster. Big question is it going to replace engineers? Not in the near future. I don't even think it's even going to replace junior engineers. But what I would say is for them, it can definitely be a big help. There's a lot of benefit there. It lets them understand the type of code they need to generate, sees the structure, and even if it gets it wrong, finding code that doesn't work, understanding why that's the case, is a really useful skill to have. Anyway, I hope you found the video useful. If you did, please give it a like. It helps YouTube understand that this was useful content for you and others like you. And feel free to subscribe to the channel, or at least have a look at some of the other videos that I've created. Anyway, thank you for your time today, and hope to see you again soon.